Hi, everyone. Welcome. Good afternoon,
Good
evening, depending where you're
evening.
calling in
That's
from.
right.
Depending on where you're dialing in from, could be a different time. But we're super excited to have you regardless. And I'm going to give us like maybe a minute or two to just let folks funnel in, and then we will get
Perfect.
started.
Well, so excited to have you all joining. I know it's so hard to find this time at the beginning of the year, but I know I'm
Truly.
honored to be here. And I know lots of you have lots of things to do, so we'll make this evening fun and interesting for everyone.
Absolutely. And if you know folks who would be interested in this afterwards, always remember that we'll have the recordings. You can share it with colleagues and anyone in your network afterwards. So we are super excited for that. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started so we make sure we get through all of the wonderful content. But welcome, everyone. If you've never joined our webinar series before, welcome for the first time. If you're familiar with us, welcome back. Last year, we did a Science plus Joy equals Impact series all about reading instruction. And this year, we are going to do an all about writing instruction. So super excited. We heard a lot of folks were interested in hearing more about that. So we're going to kick it off talking about the writing process and how to make that super joyful, but also includes all of the research and high quality instruction. So we are super excited to kick us off. But before we do that, if you are new to us, just wanted to introduce you to us at Riff. Here at Reading is Fundamental, our mission is to aim to works to disrupt the alarming US literacy crisis by inspiring the joy of reading in children, which we believe is a critical element to driving the frequency, motivation, and engagement needed to create those skilled, lifelong readers. And we know that if we build that foundation for joy early on, then all wonderful opportunities will come after. And we really hope that you feel that joy in our presentation tonight and throughout the entire series. And we've been around for a long time. We are coming up on our 60th anniversary next year. And here's a little bit of our footprint. We are in all 50 states, including DC, which is where our office is. We have served almost 200 million children. We've distributed 427 million books. We're in 27,000 communities. And we have over 1 million volunteers, teachers, and advocates. And we now have closer to 2 million since you all are here tonight. So we're working our way there. And I'm not going to take too long to introduce our wonderful facilitator because she is also going to introduce herself as well. But I'm super excited to welcome Ms. Jennifer Jump. She is the Senior Academic Officer at Teacher Created Materials. She's a former classroom teacher, instructional coach, school administrator, and my favorite fun fact, because I live in DC and worked in DC public schools myself, she's the former literacy director at DC public schools. And you'll hear a little bit about her work, but she's also an author of several publications that bridge the science of reading with practical classroom implication and application. And tonight we will talk all about that with writing. So I'm super excited to not take any more time and turn it over to Miss Jennifer. And thank you so much for your time and sharing your expertise with our community tonight. So thank you.
You, well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I am so excited to just talk about the science and the joy behind writing instruction. And I know what you're looking at right now is not what you want to be looking at, but we'll get there. Don't you fret. The joys of the work that we do on Zoom. I wish that I could say I was a professional now, but I'm not. I'm still figuring it out
Well,
day by day.
it's funny you say this, Jen, because before you go, I had notes in my intro to introduce you better, but my screen wasn't working, so I just wung that. And so I feel your technical struggles. So
All right. So we've all been there. So yeah, we're talking about this, the science and joy, all about the writing process. And before I get started, it makes the most sense for me to tell you a little bit about who I am and where I'm coming from. So I do work with teacher created materials, and I'm imagining that not everybody in the room or watching this later has heard of TCM. Teacher created materials is this amazing family owned supplemental curriculum resource company out of Huntington Beach, California, started just about 50 years ago now. And our founder, Rochelle Caracciolo, believed in this vision of creating a world in which children love to learn. And now her two daughter children, Corrine, our president on the right, and Deanne on the left, continue to lead that charge. And we support schools and districts across this nation, but also across the world. And we are just really honored to get to do that. With that said, I'm Jen. And I think she did a pretty good job telling you a little bit about me, but I'm also a mom. I think that's an important thing to note. I'm a mom to a teacher as well. I try to tell people I'm 29, and then I have to admit that I have a daughter who's a teacher, so that doesn't really pan itself out very well, but I try. And yes, I've served as a literacy director in 2 different districts, and I'm truly passionate about this work of literacy. And so I want to start us off by asking, hey, what's the purpose of writing? And you should have access to your chat feature. I have a lot of made up answers in my head if we have a quiet group this evening. But what is the ultimate purpose of writing? Like, why do we ask kids to write? Or why do we write? What is the ultimate reason for writing? And I'll like watch that chat and see if anybody's brave enough to get us going. But one of the things I hear almost every time I ask this question is to communicate. And I'm like, it is. Writing is a form of communication. It is one way that the world interacts and engages. Oh yes, share your ideas. Exactly. That's another one. Just to share. It's a form of communication. Indeed, it is. And that is exactly the idea is when we're talking about writing, we're talking about something that is imperative. It's not something that's a nice to have. It is something that is truly part of who we are as humans. It's a way we communicate. It is one way that we share and communicate our ideas and our feelings. Chantel, exactly. Indeed. And so it's interesting that when we started this movement around the science of reading, which now it's been about 5, 6 years now, and we leaned back into Dr. Scarborough's reading rope from 2001, and we leaned in here big time. And we looked at all of the different strands of the rope weaving together to make for a skilled reader. But then I have to ask this question, like, wait a minute, but what about writing? Is there logical crossover when you look just at this reading rope? Do you see the logical crossover? And the answer ought to be yes. In fact, it should be like a very loud yes. So if we start at the bottom and look at those bottom strands of the rope, we've got decoding. Well, decoding and the opposite, encoding, creates for the ability to be the writer who puts pencil to paper, right? So there is definitely a crossover with that writing. If we look up at the top strands, we could pick any one of them. I'm going to choose vocabulary. Well, precise vocabulary does make a difference in writing, and being able to choose the right word for the right space at the right time in the right moment is all about what makes for a writer. So there is without a doubt logical crossover. And yet, interestingly enough, we talk about this as the reading rope. Now, fun enough, an amazing colleague out there in the educational universe has said, wait a minute, we don't want to just have a reading rope, we want a writing rope, and that's Joan Sedita. And her amazing work around the writing rope has really helped us structure that same type of thinking and has allowed for us to think about the implications for instruction for writing. So the reading rope allowed us to think about the instructional implications for reading, but what about those for writing? And if we look down this writing rope from Joan Sedita, we find all of these things from critical thinking, which is that metacognitive piece, like what are we doing inside of our brains, to the syntax, which is that sentence work, the structure of text, the craft of writing, which by the way would include that word choice that we just mentioned from a moment ago, and transcription, which is all of the handwriting and spelling and keep all of that stuff. So wow, there's a lot of implications here for writing. And so now we know, oh wait, there are some really good models for us to think and converse about what's the research behind writing. And quite frankly, writing matters. And here's what we know: writing strengthens vocabulary, syntax, comprehension, and builds knowledge. So, oh, wait a minute. Those are all things that everyone in this room is like, we need those things, right? We need our students to have stronger background knowledge and vocabulary. We want them to have the structures of language the right way. We want them to understand what they're reading and be able to write about it. This is important work. So important that Joan Sedita said this: writing is not just a way to share what we know, it's a way to grow what we know. Huh, what? So writing isn't just a method to communicate, but it's also a method to continue to grow and learn. And so when I read that, and I guess in the back of my brain, I've always known that writing is one way we can continue to become smarter. But when I read it in that quote, I was like, yes, because that's so true and so real. And when we really look, like if we lay down everything we have and we're like, okay, what does the research say? We ought to be looking towards really smart and strong places. And one of those places for me is always the education practice guides from the What Works Clearinghouse or the IES, Institute of Ed Science. And this particular one is teaching elementary school students to be effective writers. Now, I know if you're like, but I teach a middle school or I teach adults, that's okay. It's all right. These are structures for teaching writers. So while it says elementary writers, elementary school, we're talking about writers. So beginning writers. And they have 4 recommendations. And they are straightforward and very easy to read. And I'm gonna share those 4 with you. We're not talking about all 4 today. We don't have time, but we are gonna hone in on a few. Here they are. The first recommendation, super simple. Provide time for kids to write every single day. Number 2, teach students to use the writing process for a wide range of purposes. 3, teach students to become fluent with all of these things: handwriting, spelling, sentence construction, typing, and word processing. And recommendation 4 is to create an engaged community of writers. So let's start with recommendation number 4. We have the distinct requirement, ability, responsibility. That's probably the best word: responsibility to create spaces for our young people where they feel safe to be writers. And I always joke and say, we accidentally, inadvertently, not on purpose, kill young writers with the red pen and with the expectation that writing should be perfect. Well, writing isn't perfect. In fact, if you looked at my desk right now, I could tell 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different pieces of paper that I could easily count that have writing all over them. And not a single one of them is publication worthy. But I've written a lot because I'm an engaged writer. Like I write all the time for all of the things. So number 4, we're not talking about it today because it's there. Like we know that one. And it is heavy on our shoulders as educators to always do that work. All right, we'll keep going. And let's talk about number 2. Recommendation 2 says this: teach students to use the writing process for a variety of purposes. This is one view of the writing process. And we'll start in red at the top. And we'll say pre-writing to drafting to revision to editing to publication. And this is one of the ways we could call the writing process. This is Donald Graves' model. But instead of pre-writing, sometimes you might use the term brainstorming. Um, but everyone has seen something like this, right? And sometimes I like to say, let's keep it simple. This is what it is, right? It's write, rethink, rewrite, repeat. Write, rethink, rewrite, repeat. I thought that was such a fun way to look at it. And in theory, we look at the writing cycle like this: read, rethink, rewrite, repeat over and over and over again. Well, friends, we are going to take some scenic detours. When we write, we're going to avoid things like potholes, and yet we're still going to get to our destination. Sometimes we've got to drive through a tunnel. It isn't always perfect. It's non-linear. It is not a perfect cycle. It looks a little bit more like this. There isn't a process that is perfect. Sometimes you're going to start with a pre-write and then do a draft, but then go immediately to publication because we're not going to spend the time. We're going to allow an imperfect piece to be published. Maybe we never publish it at all. Maybe we never edit it, but we do a lot of revising. Maybe we start in a space where we've got the sentences and we start with the space where we revise first because we have the sentences we need. There are so many ways we can get into this process and do this. And this graphic was my favorite graphic of the week because that's the process. And so then if I look at the process to the writing rope, we can start to see the comparisons, right? Like there is a lot of thinking involved in that pre-writing space. But if you look at things like in writing craft, that's where you're looking for word choice. Well, word choice is going to fit in right into revision. Interesting. I made those the same color. That was an accident, not on purpose, but it worked out perfectly. So let's talk a little bit more about the process of writing. And so we're going to start with that pre-writing piece. We're going to go through all of those different parts of writing and be thoughtful about what they look, feel, and act like when we think about both the science and the joy of this work. But the science is important. All of the stuff that we've learned from the Institute of Ed Science or What Works Clearinghouse, we ought to be bringing to everyday's instruction. So the first one is pre-writing. And pre-writing is designed to generate ideas for writing. It's around a topic or discovering a wide range of different topics. And here's what I want you to know. Not all pre-writing looks the same. What pre-writing looks like this week might be different. The next week might be different than next week. Then this is the one that I think we can rest our, like, we can hang a coat up on it. It's so important to me. Not all pre-writing leads somewhere. Sometimes the only thing you're going to do with your students is the pre-write. And then instead of it being a cycle, it's a pre-write done. Like we're done now. Yes, we got some work done. We showcased our learning. We were able to show what we know and how we get to move on. Not all pre-writing works for every reader. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story. When I was in 7th grade, the thing our teacher wanted us to do all the time was to brainstorm lists. I don't like lists. Lists stress me out. Lists make my heart palpitate. They make my armpits sweaty. I didn't want to write lists. Even in 7th grade, I didn't want to write a list. And finally, I was like, excuse me, my teacher, who I adore with every ounce of my being, may I please not write a list? May I please draw it in a web? But I called it bubbles at the time. Can I draw it in bubbles? And she was like, sure, draw in bubbles. And then all of a sudden, I was able to get the work done. But the reality is that pre-writing, one of the most important things the research indicates about pre-writing is that oral rehearsal improves quality. So anytime we can get our students yakking, talking about their writing, it's a good thing. Anytime we can get our kids talking about their writing, it's a good thing because we know the research is very clear. Oral rehearsal improves quality. So get kids talking. So what are some pre-writing strategies that you've used? Here's a few that I have, and if you want to put some additional in the chat, that's awesome. So things like creating lists, group mapping, what I know and what I wonder, that beautiful beginnings of a KWL chart, a talk first, write next. Just the bubbles work, or as my friend calls it, the sad spider. Where students put their topic in the middle and then they branch it out with all of the information that they might want to write about. But all of those are different pre-writing strategies. So let's try a pre-writing strategy. And I'm going to ask each of you to play along and do this at home. So you're going to need to grab a writing utensil of any sort and any piece of scratch paper. Even a smaller sticky note will work. And here's your prompt. We're going to use a strategy called think, draw, list. That's the strategy. Think, draw, list. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is think of a place you love. You've got 10 seconds. Jot it down. Write it down. So write your place down. I'm writing mine down too. I got mine. And if you know me, you know what I've put on this paper. I'm just saying. All right, now the next thing is draw it in 30 seconds. You only have 30 seconds. Draw it. Go. Okay, stop. Now, list 3 words or images that come from your picture. So what three things can you list from your picture? 3 words, ready, set, go. All right, I got mine. Do you have yours? So that very quick, simple pre-writing strategy is one of my favorites. It's easy. Think, draw, list. It took us just under 3 minutes. It's so fast and so easy, and yet we've done a lot. We've done a lot of things. Now, I said draw for 30 seconds and you have 10 seconds to think of a place. You could extend those times for students. You could even give them a list of ideas of places that they love. There's lots of things you can do to scaffold this, but you've got it. Now keep this because we're going to use it later on. Okay, now we move into the next step of that writing process, keeping in mind that it doesn't have to go in this perfect order every time. And that's when we get into drafting. Drafting is when we're going to move from these ideas to sentences, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Oh, it goes from A to perfect. Nope, it doesn't have to be like that. Drafting is the act of putting all of these ideas onto the page and being able to move from bullet points or notes from that into sentences into paragraphs. And drafting can take different forms. Drafting can be full paragraphs. It's messy. We should embrace errors. We should be excited about things and not be afraid for it to look different than our neighbor. And mistakes, quite bluntly, should be part of the process. In fact, they should just exist. And so when we think about drafting, I love this slide. This is just a myriad of different ways that we can draft. And if I were the queen of the world, I would want all of these. We should do all of these different things, like an oral rehearsal draft, a picture first draft, a comic stripped, you know what I'm trying to say, right? Draft, dictation, paragraph frames, quick writes, sticky note sentences, think, pair, write, checklist sentences, micro writing, looping, sentence starters, Foursquare, graphic organizers, bullet to sentences. There's a million different strategies, but I want to try one with you today. And we're going to try this strategy called sentence sprint. And this sweet little strategy is exactly that. So now we're going to take what we did for our pre-writing idea. And now I'm going to give you 3 minutes, just three. And your job is to write as many sentences as you possibly can about your topic. No order, no rules, nothing at all. Write one sentence, write the next sentence. It's okay. So this is the directions for sentence sprint. You're going to give the directions, set the timer, and then write as many students or sentences as possible. Don't write students, that's weird. Any order, any start, just keep writing. Sentence, 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 sentence. So let's begin. Are you ready? In fact, we'll just do a minute and a half because we're adults and we'll get them done fast. So write as many sentences as you can. Any start, anything at all, as long as it's about the topic. Just write. Not a paragraph, just sentence. One sentence, next sentence. Go. 10 seconds. All right, nice job. I got 7 sentences written in that sentence sprint, but think about this as a drafting opportunity. It is just one way to get students to write, and without the pressure of having to create a perfect paragraph or to start sentences differently, what we do is give students some opportunity to become fluent in their sentence writing. And I know one of the sessions that you're going to get to hear about is the power of sentence writing. And quite honestly, that's in one of those 4 recommendations. So we should be getting good at writing sentences. So now we've got some sentences. And so now we've done some drafting work. So the next step, in theory, if it was a perfectly cyclical process every time, would be revising and editing. And revision means we're refining the meaning or the structure. And it's truly changing a draft at the structural level. It's doing things like adding information, taking away information that's not pertinent, rearranging to help make things clear. It's really about finding the meaning and refining the meaning. Okay, so that's revision, makes perfect sense to me. So, what on earth can we do to revise? So, revising isn't the red pen business. And so here's what I love about revising is if we take a step back and remember for a moment. So, here's a strategy for revising. It's one that most people have heard of. It's called CARES. Change, add, rearrange, eliminate, standardize. And here's what we could do. We could say to kids, okay, do these things. Go revise your work. And then what happens is that the shoulders that were once up and solid and begin to slump. Because what does that mean? Go revise, go change and add and rearrange and eliminate. What does that mean exactly? And do I start with change and then go to add and then rearrange? Do I follow this order? And well, let's be real. It's exactly like the process. It's not perfect. There isn't one place to start and then you move on to the next and you move on to the next. Let's be real. Sometimes with cares, maybe the easiest thing is just to eliminate everything. I'm teasing, don't do that. So instead of saying, "Oh, let's go revise and do everything," let's like narrow it down. What do we want to do? You know what? I'm looking over the shoulders of my class and I notice something. I noticed that in this process of writing during our sentence sprint, my friends wrote some very basic sentences. Like most of their sentences began with I like or I am. I want to go with add. I want to use the revising strategy of add. And so here's my sentence that we're going to use as the exemplar. I found the sentence, it was on one of my students' papers, and I pulled it because I think we can use this to add. And when we think about adding to a sentence to make it stronger, we could add things like when, where, why, and a description. We don't have to add all of those things, but we can certainly think about it. So when I look at the sentence, you know what I think we need to know right away? I think we need to know right away where. Where was this castle? Now, here's the funny part. If you know me, you know me. And you're going to know right away that it's going to be I, Jen Jump, like the castle, and where? At Disney World. So now look, I've just done something very simple. I've revised. And here's the best part. This is sentence level work. This is actually grammatical language sentence level work. This is good work for kids. And if we use their work, it's even better. So now I want to keep building. I want to keep showing that I can continue to add. So let's add a description. So how might I describe the castle? Well, for me, the reason I like the one at Disney World more than the one at Disneyland is because it's more colorful and frankly, it's just bigger. But we could add this. I like the colorful castle at Disney World. And since we start, so very clearly, like you can see how very simply this strategy of add for cares in that activity of revising makes a lot of sense. And it's so very easy. And now I could say to the students, now you go find one sentence. And I want you to think about where is a sentence you can add to? And why would you want to add there? So we want to really give students the opportunity to be thoughtful and be like very aware of where they are at. So now, if we keep rolling through our process that's not linear process, but we're going to pretend it's linear for today, we then move into editing. And editing is the space where, well, we're polishing for clarity and conventions. This is where that it's preparing it to be read by other people. It's making sure that we have all of the things like capitalization, punctuation, and spelling is correct. It's like polishing up your glasses. You want to be able to see it. You don't want to have anything like anything terribly wrong, any glaring errors, if you will. The focus on editing is helping the readers to be able to understand it better. And the way that that works, the only way that that works is when a student really understands like what the purpose is. So this is such a powerful thing. In editing, I think I thought about like, oh, should we try a strategy here? And I was like, no, I want us to go back to this recommendation. Because if we don't ground our thinking about why this science and joy is so important for our kids, like we forget that there's research behind this. And so recommendation 3 says this: teach students to become fluent. And these are the things: handwriting, spelling, sentence construction, typing, and word processing. Now, I'm about to sound like I'm standing on a soapbox, but newsflash, I'm sitting in my chair, so it's okay. But the reality is this: when our young people are stuck in things like handwriting and spelling and sentence construction, and even just putting the words on the paper, it steals all of their time and space. And this statement, this right here was like the moment I realized how very important this work is. So when handwriting is automatic, guess what? There's more space for them in the memory to compose, edit, and revise. When spelling is is automatic, there's more space to do the work. When capitalization and punctuation are automatic, there's more space to do the work. When sentence construction is more automatic, hey, there's more space to do the work. Now, here's the most interesting part. I've got a senior in high school kid. My senior in high school kid is a writer. And this kid writes and writes and writes and has done really well. In fact, the ACT score for writing was like shockingly good. I was like, okay, cool. You are a writer. But interestingly enough, handwriting, spelling, capitalization, and never came automatic. Messiest handwriter I've ever met, and for a senior in high school, and spelling is atrocious. But here's what happened. This human stopped caring and just became a writer. And so all of their space is still there. And they've learned how to back end and figure out how to like fix it at the end. But that's so hard. Instead, what we have, the responsibility is to provide our kids with enough space to do these things. We want to give our young people enough space to get good at handwriting, good at spelling, good at capitalization and punctuation, and good at sentence construction, so that we don't have we don't have that burden. In fact, we can then focus on the fun part of being a writer. And so I asked the silly question, like, what implications does this have into our editing instruction? Not just our instruction in general, but specifically around editing. If we know this is true, that automaticity is more space. So what do we know about editing? Well, what we learn is that the things that we should be editing for are the things that make the biggest difference. So let's edit for spelling and capitalization and punctuation. Let's host expectations that that's the case. When you get to learn about creating fluent sentence constructors, do that. Find ways to allow for your students to become sentence constructors. Give students multiple opportunities to put their pencil to paper so that they work on their handwriting. Expect spelling so that students don't fret about it. And the reality here is this: when students their writing skills are effortless, they can focus on the work of writing. It's a beautiful thing. It's like shocking and real. And so that's, I wanted just to make that really interesting point around editing specifically, is that we can look at editing as a door into being a successful writer, bigger picture. Like, we can give students access to being able to do the stuff, being able to handwrite and be able to spell and be able to use good punctuation. If we can give students access to that, it becomes easier for them to be writers. And then, if you will, if we were looking at this process, we are at the last piece, and that is publishing. And publishing is designed to share with an authentic, real audience. It's any time we're sharing writing with any type of audience. And the reality is this, is that humans need audience. It's the red carpet moment. Every writer, every human, every child deserves this, right? Publication can take many different forms. I mean, there isn't one form to publish work. There are a myriad of ways to publish works. And then sometimes people will say, but Jen, some kids don't find the way that kids love it. And here's a listing of all of the different publishing strategies, but I'm gonna read these to you because they're worth it. But I want you in the chat feature, just put your favorite way to publish or showcase student work. So there's an author's chair, creating a class anthology, partners sharing, audio recordings, hallway displays, portfolios, digital storybooks, a podcast. I mean, there haven't been any famous ones of those lately. Newspapers, community partnerships, library sharing. Erin Bailey, I am in love with a good class book too. In fact, here's a funny story. I remember the first time I created a class book and my students drew their pictures in clip art on like the oldest Macintosh computers on the planet, and then we printed them out, and it was ridiculous. And I was so proud, and it was so embarrassing. I love a good class book, and the author's chair can be so powerful, right? Just to give kids that place. One of the other things that I didn't even put on this list, now that I'm kind of mad at myself, is was thinking about yes, a poetry slam, a spoken word event, why those aren't on my list, is just inviting a guest in and allowing students to share with the guest. Our principal was always someone, and as a former literacy director, I got invited to classrooms all the time to go to be a panel of humans listening to different published pieces. And I think the one last thing I want to say about publishing specifically is that, wait a minute, remember, publishing doesn't have to mean perfection. And this is where I want to just like step back for a moment and say, I'm joking. Like, yes, there is a structure to the process, but it's not perfect. And sometimes we can allow for something to go on a wall in a hallway that isn't perfect, that showcases the hard work of the process and doesn't have to be the perfect writing. In fact, I've published a few books, and I'm really proud of our editing team, but it went through multiple people before it got put in, went to the printer. We're not asking our young people to go through multiple editors before they put it to print. We're asking them to put forth their greatest works, and their greatest works will look different, and they'll look different from the beginning of the year to the mid of the year to the end of the year. So I thought I'd do something fun. And I wanted to see how it went. And I thought we could do a little bit of writing process inspiration. Because here's the thing, writing is something that teachers say all the time, I don't have time for writing. Yes, we do. We have to make time for writing. And when we realize that the process doesn't have to be perfect, we don't have to publish every piece, we don't have to go through the whole process every time we put pencil to paper, then we start to realize that writing is doable. So here's what I want. I want you to think of something that someone has said to you about writing that you think is worth sharing. So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to put mine in the chat feature first. And um, the gifted person, the gifted coach at our school used to say this to us all the time, write all day, every day. Just write, just write all day, every day. And she said it all the time. And it used to drive me bananas. I was like, why are you saying that? Why do you insist on saying it over and over again? And what I realized is that when that was the part when that was in my head, I was doing it more often on purpose. And that was so powerful. So if anyone else has another like quote, it could be a professional quote, or it could be a former colleague's thought worth sharing. So we'll let you put any of those up into the chat feature. This is a quiet group, and I'm okay with that. I get it. It's the end of the day. I hear you. And we'll keep going. But if you have one you want to add, feel free. I do want to remind you of something really important, that flexibility is the secret sauce. That while, yes, this is an order, Donald Graves put this order together, but the reality is that this is going to be different. And we're going to use this as a toolkit, not a checklist. So this writing process isn't a checklist. It isn't pre-writing check, drafting check, revision check, editing check, publishing check. Nope, it is not a checklist. It's a toolkit. And we should have lots of different things in our toolkit. And so when we talk about the writing process, we should have things in our toolbox for each of these spaces. That's why we did a pre-writing strategy, why we tried a drafting strategy. All of those, we've looked at those different pieces. And then I will say this. One of the most important things we can do is more writing and more often. And not because Jen Jump said so. Not because like I have a thought out there of something, but the first recommendation is this: provide daily time for students to write. And I really wish it said provide students time to write all day, every day. Just give kids more time to write. And so there's this reality that we have to give children lots of things to write and lots of time. And so I say, hey, let's do it more writing, more often, more writing, more often, more writing, more often. And I say it all the time to teachers that I work with. And how do we do that? There are 5 things that I think we have to consider every time we're thinking about, we want our students to engage in the process of writing more, 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 more. We have to do these things. We have to schedule for it. We have to provide students with routines so that it's very clear. Kids understand what is expected. We have to provide students opportunities for quick wins. One of my favorite things that my colleague Kim Carlton has taught me all along the last 8 years we've worked together is that quick wins in writing are so important. Provide quick wins. Like, be proud of the sentence that was written. Be proud of the work that was done during sentence sprint or the work that was done during a pre-writing activity. Allow for quick wins. And number 4, this one's going to make you mad at me, and I'm okay. Slow down, baby. Just slow down. There's this reality that we think, okay, we have to get through the publishing process. We got to get to publish. We got to get to publish. I have to publish every week. I have to publish no, 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 slow down. You don't have to publish every week. You don't have to revise and edit every single piece of paper. Sometimes you're going to start with a draft and finish with a draft. It's okay. The more students write, the better they are. So let's provide them choices, give them chances to do things. We want to build in ample opportunities for students to practice and practice and practice. Some of the little stuff that makes so much difference in the process of writing is by giving simple, silly choices. Can it be a mechanical pencil? Sure. Can I write with a pen? Okay. Can I write this time on sticky notes? Yes. Can I have unlined paper? Sure. Those are choices. Can I use the computer this time? Can I use this type of graphic organizer? Those are choices that we're giving students. And this is a powerful way to ensure that our students are writing more and writing often. And that the other thing we can do in that writing more and writing often is to ensure that we're integrating writing all throughout the day. And so we have opportunities to engage students with science lab write-ups or social studies quick writes or math explanations. And so I just like to give an example of what really do you mean by that? Well, here's an example. If you have 12 divided by 3, write a sentence that explains what the answer is and how you know it's correct. And what students have to do then is use their writing skills to demonstrate their understanding of mathematics. And so this can happen in mathematics, it can happen in science, it can happen in social studies. And what this does is give students different ways to access their skills of writing. And they're going to be building their fluency while they're writing in mathematics and in science and in social studies. And they're going to be building those skills that they need to be successful writers. So how do we put it all together? So now we know, okay, there's this writing process, but now you've told us, Jen, that it's not a perfect process. It's like this, okay? And you've also made sure we are very clear that we've got to make sure kids write more and write often. And we have to have a bulk of strategies to support their learning. So how do we put it all together? Well, here's the thing. Putting it all together means that we have to ensure that our students have ample times to write throughout a day. It is the beauty of writing throughout the day is that these little moments of writing opportunities are going to eventually create this ripple that creates writers. And that was really our hope today, is that we were thinking about both Graves's process, but we were also thinking about Joan Sedita's writing rope and the What Works Clearinghouse recommendations. And quite honestly, all of these things tie together. They weave together to make this beautiful tapestry, which will make for writers. And what do we mean by that? Well, we have to think about Graves and that structure being the pattern. We've got to have a pattern. We got to know something to follow. Do we have to follow it perfectly? No, because we're creative. Writing is a process. It's a creative process. Sedita is all of the threads. We need all of those pieces in that writing rope to put it all together. This tapestry doesn't happen without those threads. Thank you, Joan Sedita, right? And then the IES, that's the directions. They're saying, hey, here are the things you have to do to be successful, period. It's very, very clear. And finally, the science of reading is the foundation. It's like the loom, if you will. Okay, I don't really know what that means, but I think it's the thing that's like the framey thing that you put the thing and then you sew the things. It's the frame. It's the background. It's the reason. And so when we bring it all together, we know we have all of these different things that we're bringing together to create for a space where children love writing. And so as we kind of get to the end of our time together and open it up to make sure there aren't any questions or comments or conversations to be hosted, I want to ask this question. When you think about the science and the joy, what is something that you can commit to? So if we think about everything we've talked about today, like what is something you're like, wait a minute, I can commit to that to bring the science and joy back. What is something that you can commit to? And so for me, as I looked at this, I had some pretty, like, as I was bringing this, I thought back in the classroom, one of the things I know I needed to do was diversify the different ways I ask students to draft. Usually drafting looked the same. I handed out the same kind of drafting paper, and it was like, now we're going to do the draft of the piece we're going to write. I didn't recognize that drafting could be so many different things for young people. The sentence sprint was not in my repertoire when I was in the classroom as a third grade teacher my first few years. So that would be my first commitment. I would first commit to giving my students different ways to access this. Any other commitments that we want to say? Awesome. Thank you for sharing them. All right, so it would be silly for me not to say thank you so much, but there are two things. I want to open it up for questions. I want to share with you, if you're interested in this writing book, the Science of Reading writing book, if you go here, I'm going to give 10 away. I've got 10 in my closet that are ready to get sent out. So if you fill that little URL out, I'm going to pick 10 people. Maybe I'll just pick the first 10. I don't know. Maybe I'll have my kids choose. I'll have my senior choose the 10 that win. And yeah, you'll get the free book for writing. And I'm curious if there are any questions or thoughts or comments. I know it's so fast. This hour in the evening is so fast. But I am excited for you to go write something wonderful and get your students engaged in writing as well. So any questions can come to the chat feature. Carly, have you seen any questions come in on the secret chat?
I do actually. I see
Oh,
on the Q&A feature, there's a question
perfect.
that says, what's the best approach if students struggle with spelling and get stuck?
Oh, it's such a great question.
Mhm.
So first and foremost, it depends on a few things. Number one, do they have the skill set to attack that word in the encoding world? Is it a word that they have the skill set to spell? If so, we want to give them the clues that make the most amount of sense. If they're stuck and it is going to prevent them from being a writer, do you want to know my honest thought? Tell them the word, write it on a piece of paper and hand it to them. Because if writing the word is going to stop the process, it's not worth it. Now, when we're working on encoding and decoding and phonics practice, whole nother story, but that's what we're talking about. We're talking about writing in the moment. Kids are writing, they just did some work and they've learned all about plants. Yay, plants. And now you've said, can you please draw and write about the plant life cycle? And so they've started to write and they're like, but I don't remember how to spell root. Okay, here it is, ROOT. First of all, they may not have the skills to know that double O in the middle, ooh, fine. I'm just gonna, because who, at this moment, that's not the purpose. I want them to write. So I'm gonna tell them. And sometimes that makes people really mad at me, but I'm okay with that because I want kids to write. I don't want kids to cry. So that was a great question. I'm so glad it was asked.
It was, and honestly, it validates, me back in the day because that's what I used to do as a teacher. Because I taught 5th grade for the majority of my teaching, and that is, as we all can imagine, the time when they are supposed to be expected to write a lot, and I was teaching students who could not decode, basic CVC words, so I used to do the same thing, and I was always afraid, I'm not even gonna lie, so that's super validating that you just shared that because even out of the classroom, I'm still learning things from these types of webinars, so thanks for validating that.
You bet. I think it's an important, spelling is a funny thing, and spelling is under fire a little bit right now because we know about what good spelling instruction should look like. So, and it should be related directly to phonics instruction. So just tell kids how to spell a word. Don't let them get stuck when they're working in writing. When they're working on spelling, they got to work on their spelling, but you know, well,
Yeah,
thank you.
what you said before, Jen, really quickly about your daughter being like loving writing and being a fabulous writer, but not such a good speller or sentence like forming her sentences. I thought that was really powerful. And I actually texted Aaron on the side and I was like, I wish I had someone like when I was in my childhood because I didn't like to read and I didn't like to write, if I'm being honest, back when I was a kid. So like I really wish that I would have had someone like that telling me those types of things because I think it would have just changed my perspective in learning because I was so scared all the time. So it's really, validating to hear that you have those thoughts and I'm sure hopefully others do too. So,
Carly, one of the scariest things to me is that I always tell folks, like when we look at kindergartners who come into kindergarten, most of them are excited to be writers, most of them.
hmm
And what happens by the time we send them to first grade is most of them are no longer excited to be writers.
yeah,
And the only thing that has changed is us. We inserted ourselves into their lives. And so we, as educators, have such a responsibility to continue the joy in writing. And the way to do that is by finding the ways that kids like to write, which means it's not going to be the same every time. And it's okay.
hmm
Sometimes it's okay to write an entire 5 sentences on an index card just because it's different. It's okay.
yeah,
But it's hard. And I like the reality is that we as educators are under so much pressure.
of
And so
course.
we just sometimes we find the little things to get excited about. But teachers and educators across the nation, thank you for being here and like sticking with us this afternoon, evening. It was truly an honor for me to be with you. And I look forward to sending out a few books from my garage.
I know I am really envious of I'm not going to take it from anybody who's here, but good for those of you that are here live because you will get the first opportunity to snag these books. So, that's a really cool opportunity. So, thanks, Jen, for offering that.
That,
Let me see. Okay, no, I think we're good. So, yes, thank you, Jen, for everything. This
oh,
was
my honor.
wonderful. I really can't thank you enough. And those of you that were on the call, thank you so much for your time. And feel free to share the recording once you get your follow-up email, and encourage you to share the resources as well. And please sign up for our next webinar that is happening at the end of September. So we're going to be doing at least one a month, maybe even two for educators. And then we're also going to have some family webinars coming up. So feel free to look for those too. And thanks, Jen, for everything. And
You
we will
bet.
definitely be in touch. And thanks everyone for logging
Awesome.
in.
Thank you
Have a
so
great night,
much.
everyone.
Take
Bye
care,
bye.
everyone. Bye bye.